law school at UT Austin. Just to give you a quick little background about myself, I work with media services there. It's sort of a catch-all group for anything that has a plug and is not a computer or a vending machine. So we sort of take care of everything, projectors, document cameras, all kinds of stuff like that to make classes work and everything like that. But we also have two multimedia courtroom spaces that we use for trial, like mock trials, and we also have actual trials that come in every once in a while. So it's a cool little space. We have multiple cameras set up. We can sort of do a limited court TV type setup, but it tends to work out pretty well. And that's kind of what I'm here talking about today, is just basically putting on a show, which is what webcasting is. And so at least whenever you're talking about a big event type status thing, which is what we do, lots of big event things, where we'll get people from all over the world, all over the country coming in, and we need to make them look good because they paid a lot of money for them to be there, so we have to sort of deliver. Basically, just talking from my experience, and let me go ahead and get out of this deal. You are, in this sort of vague circus metaphor I've chosen, an invisible ringmaster. And I say invisible because with all sort of tech stuff, everybody obviously wants all of the workings of it to be invisible. Because whenever they're visible, people notice it, it's not good. It's very good when you don't see it, obviously, vice versa. So you are this ringmaster, and the first thing that you are is sort of a communications liaison, because you have all of these people coming to you because you take care of all the technical details. They tell you what they want, what they have in mind, and then you have to sort of communicate that to other people to make things work. So communication skills are a definite must. People wrangler because, well, you have to make them look good, and you're the only one that can, so you have to be able to let them know. Well, basically you have to sort of put them in situations where it's intuitive for them to either stay still so you can get a good shot of them, or if it's in a panel situation, you have to put them all where they can just sort of be there and do their thing, but have it be intuitive enough so they're not wandering around or basically worried, because if they're worried, they can sometimes panic, which is never good because then it becomes crisis management. You're obviously a videographer, so shots, takes, all kinds of stuff like that having to do with video production are very important. And you're a multicaster because you do all these things, and then, oh yeah, there's a law school that you have to run as well. So it's just all sort of trying to take everything in stride and make it all work together and as seamlessly as possible. Yep, and there you are. Whenever you do video casting, you will become a large cartoon bald man with a mustache. So it's inevitable. Just get used to it. First part is raising the big top lame, I know. And it's all about timing. And this is one of my favorite jokes. It used to be why can't white guys tell jokes timing? But it's sort of whatever group you are, because I actually had a friend that used to screw this joke up a lot because he'd say, why can't white guys tell jokes? So I'd say, why? I'd say, timing. You can screw the timing up every time. And so webcasts and big events tend to come up, as we also follow Murphy's Law at the law school, when everything else is really busy and hectic. So good luck. I've decided that November, February, and April are synonymous around the world with huge events that go on with little or no notice and wanting a lot. So that's what happens in those months. Solidifying the details early as you can, which is obviously not often under your control. Format is obviously very important to get nailed down as soon as possible. This is actually the easiest thing to nail down because somebody will say, oh, we're having a trial here that we want to webcast, so obviously that's already out of the bag. But if somebody says, we're having a symposium, it's a different scenario because there might not be, there's several different scenarios, at least with the room, the way you can set it up to make it work. So format, symposium, just a keynote address, you might just have a podium out there and just one mic. or a screen, just finding out what kind of things they need. Audience size in the room, this will determine how many mics you need, whether or not you need to use amplification in the room, because a lot of times you don't really need to. And it can cause problems if you're not careful with room speakers and mics in the room and feeding out to the web, and it just can create sort of a nightmare. So it's also good to know how many they're expecting. It also, like we have monitors in the rooms, like these, that can show the feed that we send out to the web, to the audience as well. In case there's like a presentation up, we can shoot it up there and people can't see or whatever, just get a little closer. Audience size on the web is also very important, just to know how many people are going to be viewing it at one time, because that determines how much bandwidth you're eating up and all kinds of things like that. Number of speakers, obviously important as well, so you know how many mics you need, all kinds of stuff like that. So these are just sort of all the details that put together the big event. And just knowing them as soon as possible is obviously great. Doesn't always happen, but yes, you get to be the intermediary between sort of pie in the sky event planners that are like, okay, I have this idea, and what do you think? And you get to sort of intermediate between that and stick in the mud reality sort of things, how things actually have to work. And so you just sort of figure out a way to help them do what they want, but within the constraints of what you can do. So, yeah, diplomacy is the key, because sometimes people don't understand the word no, so you have to sort of make up new words, like, that might be difficult, is one. We can't do that because, and you make sure you give them lots of reasons, because no is definitely a four-letter word, just extra O's on the end. You always want to talk to the people. If you have, we have a streaming server at the. Stop it. My paperclip is not doing as well as I hoped. So, apologize to everyone on the web who's hearing very terrible audio right now. By everyone on the web, I mean my boss Donald, who's probably the only person watching this. Hey, Donald. So, you want to talk with your server staff, all the admins of the server staff, as soon as possible as well, because they just like to know what's going on if you're going to be streaming on their server and through their server. When? Yeah, they like to know that as well. Just like you, they support many groups. They support, the law school. Our UT has about 55,000 students altogether, and I think about 20 or 30,000 staff. So there's lots of people for them to deal with all the time. And so you always want to get with them pretty quick, just so they don't get a little antsy. Streaming formats. We used to not really have this problem because we used to only have a Real Media streaming server. The main campus has now moved to a Helix server, which supports Real Media, Windows Media, and QuickTime. So we can stream in all those different formats at once if we'd like to, but we generally tend to stick with one, and I'll get to that later. But we have in the past streamed on two different formats at once, just because whenever we recently switched, well, I guess about 2 years ago, we switched from Real Media to Windows Media. And so whenever we're in that sort of transitionary period, we like to stream in both formats just to sort of get people over. Size of web audience is definitely something they like to know, because bandwidth is sort of a very precious commodity to them, because they have to manage it for the whole university, and if they don't get it soon enough, they get a little mad. So there's that. This is my friend Steve, who works at main campus, and he gets very agitated if we don't tell him. We actually, okay, good. Yes, absolutely.
How do you anticipate web audience?
What
you're anticipating one right now, but
right, exactly,
triple that.
Exactly. We like to talk with whoever's organizing the event, and we try to get that. We try to sort of, earlier Diviner was on that. That's one of the things you sort of try to divine from them, like, okay, do y'all know who's going to be watching this? Because sometimes it will be for one very important professor who's far away and wants to watch it, just sort of on a whim. And you're like, okay, great, no problem. We actually had an issue where we were going to be hosting a trial, a murder trial from San Antonio, And you sort of had a little glitch. The communication table, there we go. Just hold this for right now. Our communications people sent a streaming link. We only have one streaming link that we do because of the certain way we have them we have the main server pull the video from us whenever somebody signs on or whenever somebody accesses it. So we're not sending out stuff unless somebody's actually looking for it, which cuts down on inter-campus bandwidth, which is good because they like that. But they sent the link to a newspaper in San Antonio, and this, got around to the main campus people, and they flipped out because it was a very high-profile case, and they were like, hundreds of people are going to be accessing this, and so basically they're saying if we wanted to stream it, we were going to have to stream it through an outside source because we would have tied down all the bandwidth on the streaming server, and nobody else would have been able to do anything. Not that I'm sure anybody else was planning on doing anything, but they had to do that. So that's something that we just have to sort of figure out every time, and just keep communications open and fluid. So that is that. Yes, being flexible is the key, and sometimes scary like this. And I mean sort of flexible in every sense. It's really good. We have a very flexible courtroom. We have two big tables that are attorney tables that we can move into different configurations of the podium. We have a very flexible control room. We can do lots of different things, and it's so good because it's always different. It's always somebody's got an idea, they want to do it like this. Somebody has a presentation. You have to be able to get the presentation and the speaker and not just have a camera panning all over the place so you can't see anything. So we have 4 cameras, and I'll get to that in just a second, but we have 4 cameras so we can take different shots and things like that. And also, be prepared, good Boy Scouts. So these 2 things are really the key to everything. It's just use what you got, be flexible, be prepared for anything, really. Now, dressing the stage, or for the stage for whatever your webcast is going to be. This is some of the shots that we can sort of get. These are obviously, these are from a digital camera, but I lied. We can't get this shot here, but this is, there's the witness for a jury trial. These are our attorney tables we get. This actually is a pretty close facsimile to a shot that we get. This is from our back camera that looks forward. And we can also, one of our cameras that catches the witness can also catch a close-up of the judge if he's like reading jury instructions or if they're approaching the bench or anything like that. Usually we don't focus in on the jury too much. We usually get pretty strict instructions not to, but you can. For symposiums, we often put them in a panel, and then whoever's speaking will come up to the podium and we'll have a tight shot on them. But then often they'll do Q&A with each other and just discuss the paper that they've been discussing or whatever. And we can have this as a medium shot to take to whenever we use the camera from back to catch up close-ups on each of them, so we don't have to pan, because panning just looks bad. It just flat out looks bad online because every pixel is changing every frame. And whenever you cut, it's just changes once and then you're there. And so this is just another shot of that. We can also move the tables out completely, set up multiple chairs, and we actually do this for a lot of, this is actually more for a mediation like seminar where somebody is teaching and there are several people in the audience, but they want to have a more intimate discussion type feeling. And what we could do is set up one sort of tabletop mic or wireless mic on the speaker at this end, and then put out sort of area mics for any sort of question and answers we want to get for the web. And I'll get to the question and answers a little bit later. This is just a layout of our courtroom. And get the mouse here. This is the well where the attorney tables go, and of course this is the judge's bench and the witness, and here's the jury. And it's going to demonstrate where we've got our cameras. The way we've set it up is for mock trials to get as many angles as we would need for a mock trial or real trial. But it also works very well for others. We have one here between the jury and the witness. They can get great angles of the attorneys. Also, it gets really good angles if there's anybody in the audience, say for a question and answer. We can zoom in on somebody anywhere in here and just get a nice tight shot of whoever's on the mic in the audience with questions. We have another mic here, which is for if they're giving like an opening statement or final argument, we can get a great shot of that. We can also get that with this camera here. But it's also for a tight shot of the judge and for the witness. We have one here that's just, usually we just use it for wide shots because it's so sort of close to everything, but it's great for able to have a wide shot to cut away to sort of a backup, which is another thing I'll get to later, which are very important, is just backup shots to go to. And here is sort of, this is our big sort of symposium camera because it's straight on, it can go in very tight, it can get a very good shot of anything in this area right here that's facing out towards the audience, which in symposiums they obviously are going to be doing that. They're going to be situated like that. Okay, so that's sort of, you've got everything set up, you've got all the information you need, and it's on the day, which is sort of, you know, make or break time. So, yes, the most important part of webcasting. I've actually learned this, it's kind of a compound answer, but I've learned this from law students themselves, just from studying them how they function. It's the audio. When you're on the web, it's definitely the audio. And I will give you a little demonstration here. Oh, great. Well then, we'll just restart instead. Right, yeah, you know, the cast. We'll say that. I might just have to skip this one. But what I'm saying about the audio, I had a nice little demo there. We had a week-long legal lexicography symposium. And if you're not familiar with the term, lexicography, yes, is the study or the making of dictionaries. So it was a full week of lexicographers from all over the world coming and talking about famous and sometimes renegade lexicographers. So it was very interesting indeed. But yeah, I sometimes wanted to poke my eyes out because we had to film the whole thing and it was very long. But let me see if I can get back here. The important thing was the audio, because especially with computers, you know, television is much more of a visual medium. You're very focused on one thing. Of course, there's 6,000 different tickers running on any given screen, but you're very focused on one little area. And with the computer and webcast, it's very different because you're so used to multitasking. And so, well, I was going to play solitaire while the thing was playing, so it didn't work. Oh well. But a lot, and that's where I got it from the students, because anytime I walk into class and, you know, there'll be 6 students watching class playing solitaire, like, oh, okay, just listening, everything's going in, well, somewhat. But they're very much into multitasking. And so the audio is definitely very important, and here we go once again, we're back. Ladies and gentlemen. So mics are obviously very important, and they're important for different situations. People that talk at tables, obviously you just want a tabletop mic there, because they're great quality, and you can set them up all over the place. Somebody's walking around, obviously you want to have a wireless mic on them because the audio is great, and you can move around, and sometimes you just want to have one handy, because sometimes people will be standing and then they'll just get antsy, and you can't hear them anymore. They're just gone. And then area mics, it's always good to just have a couple of, I don't have a picture of one, but you know, just the flat sort of PCC, general, big, huge area mics. Because people will walk around. In certain situations, you'll need them for just different things. I'll show you one in a little bit. So there's mics that are important. Ah yes, now that I've told you that the most important part of webcasting is the audio, I will go ahead and completely contradict myself and say that the most important part is the video. And for all practical purposes, the audio probably is the most important part, because if there are low connections, anything else, audio will always sort of stay true. Video, however, is what you're judged by. If it's a big event and the video doesn't look good, it's going to reflect very poorly on you and it will come back to you. But if it looks great, accolades galore. So the video is very, very important. And it starts and ends almost with the cameras. The cameras, I mean, if you have a great camera, then you have a great product. And it comes in to your streaming, and you get compression, and it comes out, and depending on your impression, it can come out great or bad. But if you start with bad, you get bad no matter what. So cameras are very, very important. So please use a camera word. Of course, cameras, 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 most important part. Close-ups are very important because people connect. When you look at somebody and you talk to somebody, you connect with their eyes. And that's where I'd say, facial communication is, there's body language and everything. Facial communication is very important. Eyebrow raise or something like that. It just covers so much. Composition, it's also important because you want your shots to look good, look professional. Often, if it's dead on, you can basically just square it up, straight up in the middle. It looks great. But if you're off to the side, if you've got a side shot, you usually want to give them some look space so that it just looks pleasing. And some headroom, you obviously want them to be completely in the frame, so that's always good. Cuts and pans are very important. This is why you need multiple cameras, because if you are panning everywhere, as I said, it just gets pixelated and garbled. TV can do it. It looks fine on TV. And actually slow pans with a good robotic, something that can pan smoothly. If you can pan smoothly and slowly, it's all right. But we have some older control units as well in another courtroom, and you have to sort of ink, 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 and it just looks atrocious. So pans are all right if you're, say, getting two people that are close together and you can just go from one right to the other. But for long distance, you'd want to cut away to like a medium shot and then come back in with a different camera for a close-up. And here's just an example of a keynote address. Please don't crash.
So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Alejandro Diaz-Manero, who's going to be talking to us on the subject of security and justice in Mexico.
So it usually is not blown up this big, but the cameras we have can usually handle blowing it up a good bit more. It's obviously a get better one. And see what I mean about
Thank you very much, Dr. Warren. Thank you all. And, well, first, I would like to divide this talk in three parts. The first part is how things are now in Mexico in matter of security and justice. Why are they like that? And what can be the future of this matter?
So it's just a very simple close-up, and it was like that for about an hour. So, but it holds your attention because you can actually feel like you're there with them. So that's and here's some webcasts.
You
It's
saw
just a witness examination.
Yes.
I said that GuideStar reported altogether 52 foundations in Texas that have revenues of budgets of $1 million.
Do you have a director for the
$20
CALI?
million, going beyond that. So
It's
like
basically a
20
one-man
million.
operation.
Altogether, there
So
are 52.
It's just whatever you
41 of
decide on the
those
fly.
have
And it's basically
budgets
just trying to keep up
from
with it.
20,
Because it'll happen so quickly. We don't have the manpower, the staffing. We just don't have the staffing.
41 of
I
those.
think when you have
And
a
then there
control
are
room, or is
just
it
11
person's
that
logo?
have budgets
We have a
above,
control room that's just off the court.
100 million.
And I'll
So when you
actually have
add
some shots.
42 and 11, I'm sorry, 42 and 11, it's 53. I'm sorry, I added it wrong. It's 41 plus 11, no, it's 52, I'm sorry. Well, at this point in the afternoon, I'm not sure what I'm going to have.
You didn't get any grades in math, as I recall.
And we can also iris down on our cameras and take shots that are projected up on the screen.
Mr. Gerber, I'm Dan Sleeper. We just met for the first time. You understand?
And on this, I think we actually got the audio because they had a TV for the audio in the room, and we just sort of stuck the mic next to the TV. So
it's
ways to get around.
King Foundation or the foundation that we're talking about, the Carl free and foreign thinking foundation.
So that is just an example of just how we would do it in a webcast situation. We also have lots of symposiums for the Hispanic Center at UT.
I'm speaking more to the world and the World Wide Web. It's a great pleasure to see so many people here for our final keynote speech and presentation of the afternoon. The presentation is going to be in Spanish. For those of you who don't have Spanish and would like to understand the presentation, please make sure that you have some of the simultaneous translation equipment which is available to you at the rear.
Todo eso se los comento un poco porque pues en eso, con esa sinceridad, yo les quiero hablar de los aciertos, pero también de lo que no se ha podido
So for this particular one, we actually had a very large audience in Mexico City that was watching the symposium, things like that. We had toyed around with the idea of having, we had a translator in the audience that was translating for everyone that was actually there. But we actually had toyed around with the idea of having a translation out, actually cast as well. But it would have been a little more interesting to get it done, and we only had one person that wanted it done, and they were in the building, and they could have come to the room anyways. So, but sometimes people don't like to leave their offices for unknown reasons.
So you filtered out the local translator?
Well, he was just off to the side and wasn't, and you know, we just had her on a very close mic, so it basically didn't pick up any of the other noise in the room. That's what's so great about the gooseneck mics we have, is that they get very focused audio and filter out everything else, which as opposed to an area mic, which gets everything and gets a lot of echo and just white noise and things like that that the goosenecks really cut down on. Oh, back up. Okay. Actually, let me escape back here. We've actually done, this is actually part of the same lexicography conference, but a little more interesting, this one we did on reel as well. We had a group of actors come in and do a scene from Venice.
Well, shut up.
Where we used space rather well. This is an example of where we use.
In the Rialto, you have rated me about my monies and my uses.
We use area mics to pick it up, and when you're projecting and it sounds, when you have people that know how to project, it sounds fine. And you can turn the mics down low enough, and you can still get decent sounding audio. It's a little echoey, but
and all for use of that which is my own. Well then, it now appears you need my help. Good. You come to me and you say, Shylock, we would have monies. You say so. You that did void your rule upon my beard and foot me as you spurn a stranger cur over your threshold. Monies is your suit. What should I say?
so that's just a quick example of how it can be used just a little more flexibly. Q&A. I don't know, sometimes Q&A can be really touchy because it actually takes a lot of effort to get everybody in the audience on the web, because they're usually in a large group and it's hard to mic a large group and get decent audio at all. What we've come up with now is we have a wireless handheld that we can pass around. Of course, you then have to have somebody there to monitor the microphone and make sure that it gets passed around to whoever wants to talk. Another thing we've done in the past is set up a standing, just regular wired mic at the front and have people come up to the mic. Of course, sometimes when you're in a not very large room and people aren't forced to go to the mic to be heard by everybody in the room, people will just sort of shout out things and they don't get picked up on the web. So it's really just trying to monitor things and just sort of keep things under control and going. So, but yeah, and sometimes people don't want Q&A on the web. Sometimes they do. So it's just another instance of just matching it to fit your situation. So here we go to the control room, the brains of the whole thing. This is our setup. We have a computer here. It's just An older computer, because all it does is it's just a character generator. And we have a program that does, you know, just text and graphics and everything. It just has, the only thing that makes it different from any sort of other PC is that it has a composite video output on the back that goes to the brains of our video switcher over here, so we can send it up to our video signal as well. And then we have a little monitor here so we can see what it's going to look like on a TV. So you might be able to see, you know, this little blue thing right here, which is just, if you saw that live thing at the bottom before, that's what that is. And then we have a preview monitor here so we can set up shots while we have something stationary in another, and then, you know, cut back and forth so we can always have something ready to go. Which is really the most important thing as far as being on the switcher, is just always have something ready to go in case somebody starts moving or you need to get to something else, because things can unravel quickly if you're not prepared. And that's where we get back to be prepared. We have just a standard like Mackie audio board. It's pretty much industry standard for sound. Just so you can, you know, a lot of times you have to ride the levels because some people like to get up real close and scream into the mic. Some people stay real far away. So it's just management of whatever you come across. And this is our camera control unit, where you can control all 4 of our cameras simultaneously. And actually right here, 2 of our cameras are on trolleys. So they can trolley back and forth from left to right and just pick up different angles if you want. This is all by telemetrics, and they also have built in pre-programmed shots. So you can pre-program, I think, up to 25 shots for each camera, which is really great if you're doing like a complex setup, especially like a courtroom where you might have one set up if they're going to go, if an attorney is going to go do something on a whiteboard and do a demonstration, then you can have it there ready to go so that you can cut away, hit the shot, it goes there real quick. It does both pan, tilt, zoom, and focus memory. So it's really good to have it right there at the tip of your fingers. This is just to keep your camera adjustments. Here is like your iris control for if you're using the camera to catch what's on the screen, because if it's just, we don't do auto irising because sometimes it just has a mind of its own. And if it's, if there's slight discrepancies, they can just go whoo-hoo. So we control all of that, and there's a vector scope and waveform monitor, just to make sure all of your cameras look the same. Because it's really important that they look the same so that when you're cutting between them, you can't tell the difference at all. Again, it's about being invisible. So any differences that you see between cameras are very noticeable. And probably the most technologically advanced part of our control room is the bucket that catches all the water from the leaks in the ceiling. One room in the entire new building that had leaks, and it was the room with about $500,000 worth of equipment. So Murphy strikes again. But of course it was great. Now we get on to streaming formats, and this is something that a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about. There's Windows Media Encoder, Real Producer, and QuickTime. As I said, we used to use Real Producer exclusively because of the server that we had. We've moved to Windows Media Encoder. I'm just going to why we did it. Because it is everywhere. Outside of education and like the arts, Mac is not nearly as prevalent for several reasons. One, I think PCs are easier for, like if you have an IT department, PCs are easier to maintain on a large scale because you can set up so many different parameters and people can't mess with them as much and download stuff. And there's not as much individuality, which, hey, big brother, but I guess it's easier. But it makes it so that it's easy for anybody to watch. Because also people on Mac users, there's a Windows Media Player that's actually really good. And so that there's really no problem with Macs. It's easy for us to use. There's all kinds of, we've really only had problems with addition differences. Like we've had problems whenever we're using the latest sort of encoder, we'll get a call that somebody can't put a video because it says they need an upgrade, and so they have to call the IT department to come do the upgrade because they don't have administrative access on the computer. And so all kinds of stuff like that. So what we can do is that it actually gives you the option to go to an older codec, an older video codec. And it actually looks pretty close to the same. It's probably, I mean, it's just the only difference really between the two codecs is that there's a compression issue, so that's maybe a bigger file, slightly bigger file, but it still looks good, and we have a lot fewer problems. So it's easy to really sort of troubleshoot problems like that, especially when you're all on sort of similar machines. It's very good quality. I really like it. You can adjust it. I mean, these streams were about 300K, about 300K streams. And so you can obviously, if you have like a higher profile event, you can up them, and you can do a lot better quality if you want. But for what we find, it works really well for us, and it's free. Windows Media Encoder is completely free. I mean, Real Producer you have to buy, QuickTime you have to buy. I mean, it's rather a minimal cost, but I just thought I'd throw it in there because I like the word free. Yes, and the other two rings. Yes, you do have a law school to run. Yeah, do you have a question?
I have a question about software.
Uh-huh.
I noticed that on what you were broadcasting, there was a graphic on it.
Uh-huh.
Where is that come from?
We have, that's our character generator. We have one so we can just, we don't have to do anything in it. It's all live. We have, what we'll do if we have a symposium and we actually try to be web conscious. If we have a symposium and have multiple speakers, we'll get a program at the very first, and we'll go ahead and make up slates on our character generator for all the different speakers.
So this is a piece of hardware?
Yeah, it's the computer that I was referring to just a little while ago. It's basically just a regular computer that feeds into the back of the brains of our switcher. So there's a downstream key that whenever you turn it on, it takes this feed and sort of throws it on however you decide to put it on there. It basically just does an overlay of however you design the graphics on the computer, and you can adjust the opacity and when it's on and off, but that's really about it as far as the switcher is concerned. And then it becomes a software issue of what you want to do. I mean, we could do, with that system, we could do like scrolling graphics or whatever we really wanted to, but we don't really have a need for it. And we don't have the software to do it. We could buy it, but it's sort of doesn't meet our needs. And so, yeah, running a law school while you're doing it. And it's basically just a matter of don't forget your greatest asset, which is the lock-off, or the wide shot. Basically, if something comes up and you have to leave, me and my boss run all the media stuff for a law school with 1,500 students and about 100 permanent professors, including visiting and all the other stuff, I think close to 200 professors. So we get pulled a lot of different directions, and I know everybody else does because we all have to wear so many different hats. It's just the name of the game. So don't be afraid to just sort of lock it off for a little bit. You have to leave. You have to. I mean, we just have to do it, and we come back, get back on it. You just have to sort of find a. That's another situation where we'll use area mics. If we have to leave and we're not sure quite what's going to go on, then we might bump up the area mics just a little bit for contingencies, just in case somebody wanders away from their mic. But usually, especially in symposiums, usually people will stay pretty grounded. But yeah, so there's the wide shot. So it's good. Again, just be flexible. Use what you have. Be prepared. Once again. And yeah, just do what you can, and don't be afraid to say it if you can't, because if you don't, you're really the only one that can, because people will assume, especially if you do good work, people will assume you can do anything. So don't do bad work, but just let them know what your limitations are, and I think they'll really understand it. I think we went from 6 people down to 2 in some work studies, so we've gone through a situation where we have to tell people, look, it's not because it's something that we physically can't do. Well, it is. We physically can't do it because there's only 2 of us. But it's not that we don't have the capability technically. Yeah, and just sort of remember that the show will go on. I mean, it's there. It's there. You just have to make it look good. So, and right now, it's the last day. I just thought I'd sort of be very express with the whole thing. So if anybody wants to, I'd really love to hear if you guys do webcasting and what y'all do, because I'd really like to hear about it. So, yeah.
Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you been involved in, were your control room and your cameras and all this equipment is being selected? Were you involved in that process, and can you talk about what that was like? Because I think for many people, and for us, we're not in a position to choose that equipment ourselves with enough authority to really make us comfortable. So we're going to look to AV design companies that know something about videography and circuit. And really not just AV design companies, but those that have some kind of comfort with broadcast media or videography and that sort of thing. What was your...
This actually was built, I've been at the law school for 6 years, and we opened this building about 5 years ago. So by the time I got there, it was already well into, the design process had already been entered into. It was a rather long process, and we're doing the same thing with some multimedia rooms now, but I really didn't have a whole lot to do with it. But we just sort of went with the cameras that we knew we could control, and we really wanted to find stuff that we could use for a long time, and stuff that we could use on different occasions for a long time, and that would be flexible enough to do that type of stuff. And we have a routing system in our new building. We have the courtroom, and then we have a smaller production room on the floor above that has 3 cameras, and is much more of a learning type of courtroom where it's just 3 tables and some chairs for people to play juries, and then mics and stuff. And then we have a distance learning room. But they all can communicate together. So if we want to, we can take in video from like a teleconference or video conference from outside. We can pipe it into the courtroom and project it onto a screen in there. If we wanted to say, bring in an expert witness by video, if they couldn't come in. So it was all about, and we worked with a local firm that helped us put together all the ideas, and it was basically just telling them what we wanted and what we wanted to do. And my boss had been doing video for a long time, so he was really spearheading that process at the time. And so, yeah, it's basically just, I think you're right. I mean, you just have to sort of work with people that know video. And they put together a pretty good little studio for us. We really like it. Yeah, sorry.
In your case, it sounds like you have 2 rooms that were adjacent to one another, with your control room located nearby.
Yeah.
How much of a mistake do you think it would be if you had, say, 2 rooms that were far apart, and you probably were going to be obligated to locate one control room adjacent to just one of those rooms? How much of an impediment would that represent, servicing that room? And, you see what I mean? Like the room that's a little bit further away.
Distance can definitely be an issue, because especially when you have so many things going, like control to like robotics going in there. I mean, it's definitely workable. I don't know how far apart you're talking about, but
on the other end, fairly, if you run and no one's in your way, you can get there in about 30 seconds. But that's kind of, I mean, really, it's the other side of a very large building.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, they're doing that here, and it took Elmer, 30 to 45 seconds to figure out why the webcast had stopped. So, they've been broadcasting everything over 6 floors. I mean, not every single floor, but something in the basement, something 6 floors above it.
We do get a feed from another building, but we have very limited control, and it really is, it's a lot of infrastructure to put into place if you're going to control everything on a very tight scale, where you can really do anything you want. It's a lot of stuff to put in as far as infrastructure goes.
I guess I just found that with many folks that are afraid of getting close to sound equipment, video equipment, when they want you there, you need to be there physically to assist, even if it's not a problem that they need solved technically with you there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just thinking right now of 2 rooms we have that are very far apart, and there may be another way around it. I just can't think of right now.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it really is being there to hold their hand, because that's what we're there for. So it's hard. It's also about training people to be somewhat self-reliant, but still being there for them. So you don't have to be there every second, but just also letting them know that you're there, that you're around. But yeah, is this type of stuff you all are wanting to do in those rooms? What do y'all wanting to do in those rooms?
I think there will be a much greater interest in we have a courtroom that sounds like it's similar use to yours, that we have a lot of teaching exercises that go on in there, but we also have, on occasion, some actual trials that take place in this room.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's likely that in the next couple of years they're going to really want to do something like that in there. But it doesn't have an obvious choice for a control room next to it.
Yeah.
So, there's one room, but it's so small that I'm not really sure. Maybe everything could fit in there. It's very, very tiny.
Yeah.
Then we have an auditorium that has an ideal, has a control room already designated, so it's
And there are definitely more scaled down versions of the stuff that we have. This is just what they really put a lot of money into this building. They really put a lot of effort into making this something that we would use for 20 years. And so when they were planning the whole building, they were like, okay, this is going to be the courtroom, and my boss was very involved with not only the planning of the technology, but also the planning of the building, because they knew the technology was going to be built into the building, so they needed somebody there to advise on what was needed so that they could design around it. Which doesn't mean it was perfect, because the control room leaks, but they fixed it. They fixed it, supposedly. But yeah. So I guess if anybody just wants to chat, I'll be around. But I guess I'll go ahead and let everybody go because it's the last day. CALI over. Hooray!